The massive warship cut through space like a blade through silk. Its dark metal hull gleamed under the light of distant stars, and razor-sharp spikes jutted from its surface like the spines of some ancient beast. This was the Bloodclaw flagship of Admiral Kreshtar. The most feared hunter in all of Zephyrian space, Admiral Kreshtar stood 8 feet tall. His lean body covered in scales that shifted from deep purple to black, depending on his mood. Arms ending in claws sharp enough to slice through steel hung at his sides. His yellow eyes, designed for tracking prey across vast distances, studied the holographic display before him. Those eyes had never looked upon a creature that could escape his hunt. For 3,000 years, the Zephyrian Empire had ruled the galaxy. They were born hunters, created by evolution to be the perfect killers. Their reflexes were faster than lightning. Their senses could detect fear from miles away, and their claws could tear through almost any armor. Every world they discovered, every species they encountered, fell before their hunting packs. The bridge of the Bloodclaw was quiet, except for the soft clicking of claws on metal as the crew worked at their stations. Each Zephyrian officer was a master hunter in their own right, chosen for this mission because of their skill in tracking and killing. They had conquered 47 star systems, enslaved dozens of species, and never once met a creature that could challenge their dominance. Commander. Vextal approached the Admiral's command platform, his own claws scraping against the floor. He was younger than Kreshtar, his scales still bright green with youth, but his hunting record was impressive. He had personally killed over 300 sentient beings in single combat. Admiral Vextal said, his voice carrying the growling undertone that all Zephyrians use when excited about a hunt. The scouts have returned from the Outer Rim. They bring news of a new species. Kreshtar's eyes flicked to his subordinate. Another prey world. How boring. What makes these creatures worth our attention? Vextal activated a small hologram showing a blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star. The world is rich in resources, Admiral. But the inhabitants are unusual. The scouts call them humans. The hologram shifted to show images captured by the scout ships. Kreshtar leaned forward, studying the creatures displayed before him. They were small, standing only about 6 feet tall. Their skin was soft and pink, with no scales or natural armor. They had no claws to speak of, just flat nails at the end of their fingers. Their teeth were small and blunt, clearly designed for eating plants rather than tearing flesh. "These are the dominant species?" Kreshtar asked, amusement clear in his voice. "They look like prey animals. No weapons, no armor, no natural defenses at all." "That is what puzzles the scouts, Admiral. Despite their weak appearance, they have somehow become the rulers of their world. They build structures, use simple tools, and live in large groups. The scouts believe they are highly social creatures, like herd animals." Kreshtar studied the images more carefully. The humans seemed to move slowly, compared to Zephyrian standards. They appeared to communicate constantly, making noise with their mouths rather than using proper scent markers or threat displays. Most strange of all, they seemed to care for their weak members instead of abandoning them as any sensible predator would do. "Social prey animals with basic tool use," Kreshtar mused. "How did such weak creatures avoid extinction? Their world must have no proper predators." The hologram showed more images of human cities, their strange rectangular buildings, and their primitive vehicles. Everything about them screamed weakness to Zephyrian eyes. They moved in groups, they built shelters, instead of claiming territory through combat, and they even seemed to share food with one another rather than competing for it. Admiral Vextal continued, "The High Command believes this would be an excellent training exercise for our younger hunters. The humans appear to pose no real threat, but they have developed basic technology that could provide some challenge. For inexperienced pack members," Kreshtar's class clicked against his command console as he considered this. The younger Zephyrians needed practice before they could join major hunting expeditions. Recent conquests had been too easy, leaving many young hunters without proper experience in actual combat. These humans might provide the perfect opportunity for blooding new warriors. "How many humans inhabit this world?" Kreshtar asked. "Scouts estimate approximately 7 billion, Admiral. They are spread across the entire planet's surface, living in massive groups they call cities. They seem to have no understanding of proper territorial boundaries. 7 billion prey animals. Living in crowded conditions with no natural predators to control their population, Kreshtar had never heard of such a thing. On Zephyria, the weak were culled regularly by the strong. It maintained proper balance and ensured only the finest hunters survived to reproduce. These humans apparently had no such system. Sir, another officer called from the communications station. Long-range scans show the humans have spread beyond their homeworld. They've established small settlements on nearby moons and asteroids. Simple mining operations, mostly. This was even more interesting. The humans were expanding into space despite their obvious weakness. They must have developed crude space travel technology, though nothing that could threaten Zephyrian ships. Still, it showed they had some basic intelligence. Even if they lacked proper predatory instincts, Kreshtar made his decision. Commander Vextel, you will take 3 hunting vessels and a pack of 40 junior hunters to this human world. Consider it a training mission. Humans should provide adequate sport without presenting any real danger to our warriors. Understood. Admiral, should we begin with their outer settlements or proceed directly to the main world? Start with their mining operations, test their responses, study their behavior. If they prove entertaining enough, you may proceed to larger targets. But remember, this is primarily a training exercise. Do not waste time on total extermination until the young hunters have gained proper experience. Vexel's eyes gleamed with anticipation. It will be done, Admiral. When shall we depart? Immediately. The High Command is eager to add another species to our servant ranks. These humans may prove useful as laborers once they are properly broken. As Vextel left to prepare his hunting fleet, Kreshtar returned his attention to the holographic images of humans. They fascinated him in their apparent helplessness. How had such weak creatures survived long enough to develop space travel? Their world must truly have been a paradise with no real predators to challenge them. He watched images of human children playing in groups, adults working together on construction projects, and elderly humans being cared for by younger ones. Everything about their behavior was wrong by Zephyrian standards. They wasted resources on the weak. They avoided individual competition. And they seemed to prioritize group survival over personal strength. Soon Kreshtar thought they would learn the true order of the galaxy. They would discover what it meant to face real predators. The young Zephyrian hunters would have their fun. And then these humans would join the long list of species that served the Empire. Their soft, weak nature would make them excellent servants once they understood their place in the galactic hierarchy. 3 hunting ships departed from the Bloodclaw, their sleek forms disappearing into hyperspace. They carried 40 young Zephyrian warriors eager to prove themselves against live prey. None of them suspected that they were about to encounter something the galaxy had never seen before. The hunt was beginning. But for the first time in Zephyrian history, they had no idea what. They were truly hunting. The mining station on Europa hung against the black of space, like a metal flower blooming from the ice. Its lights twinkled across the frozen surface of Jupiter's moon, where human workers had spent 5 years carving tunnels deep into the ice to harvest precious water and minerals. 200 people called Europa Station home. From miners and engineers to doctors and teachers for the few families brave enough to live on the frontier, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiance, watching the 3 unknown ships approach through his viewport. They had appeared on sensors 12 hours ago, moving in perfect formation toward the outer solar system. Every attempt at communication had been ignored. The ships themselves looked unlike anything in human databases, their dark hulls covered in what appeared to be decorative spikes. "Still no response to our signals, Captain," reported Communications Officer Lynn Parker from her station. "They're maintaining course directly for Europa Station." Morrison studied the alien vessels through his binoculars. They moved with a predatory grace that made him uncomfortable, like sharks circling their prey. Something about their approach felt wrong, too purposeful, too focused. These weren't explorers or traders. They were something else entirely. "Alert Earth Command," Morrison ordered. "Tell them we have unknown vessels approaching Europa with hostile intent. Request immediate backup." "Already tried, sir," Parker replied. Command says it will take 6 hours minimum for any ships to reach us from Mars. They're treating this as a possible first. Contact situation. First contact. Morrison had read about humanity's dreams of meeting other intelligent life, but the approaching ships filled him with dread rather than excitement. There was something predatory about the way they moved, something that spoke to ancient human instincts about danger in the dark. On Europa Station, Security Chief Ben Carter was running through emergency procedures with his small team. Carter was a former Marine who had seen combat on the colony wars. His weathered face and steady hands had kept the station safe from pirates and equipment failures for 3 years. He had 6 security officers under his command and a small armory of standard weapons. "Listen up, people," Carter addressed his team in the security briefing room. "We've got unknown contacts approaching, and they're not answering our calls. Could be nothing. Could be pirates. Could be something we've never seen before. Either way, we prepare for the worst." Officer Dan Hughes, a young man barely out of the academy, raised his hand. "Chief, what if they're hostile aliens? Our weapons aren't designed for fighting unknown technology." Carter smiled grimly. "Then we get creative, Hughes. Humans have been adapting to new threats since we lived in caves. We'll figure it out." The 3 Zephyrian hunting ships dropped out of hyperspace near Europa with predatory precision. Commander Vextel stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the human mining station through the view screen. The structure looked fragile and poorly defended, exactly what he expected from a prey species. "Begin the attack," Vextel commanded. "Remember, this is training for the young hunters. Let them take the lead, but intervene if they make serious mistakes." The Zephyrian ships opened fire with energy weapons that sliced through Europa Station's outer defenses like hot knives through soft flesh. Warning alarms screamed throughout the facility as sections lost atmosphere and power systems failed. The humans scrambled for emergency suits and shelter as the alien ships closed in. But something unexpected happened. Instead of panicking and fleeing as prey animals should, the humans began to organize. Carter's security team took defensive positions while civilian leader mining foreman Lisa Rodriguez led non-combatants to the deepest parts of the station. They moved with purpose and coordination that surprised the watching Zephyrians. The first Zephyrian hunting party breached the station's docking bay with casual confidence. 20 warriors in powered armor, their claws extended and energy weapons ready, expected to find cowering humans begging for mercy. Instead, they walked into a carefully prepared trap. Carter had spent the precious minutes during the initial attack setting up a kill zone in the main corridor. As the Zephyrians advanced through the station, confident in their superiority, he triggered explosive charges stolen from the mining equipment. The blast brought down a section of ceiling, crushing to hunters immediately and trapping 5 others. Under twisted metal, the surviving Zephyrians stared in shock. Prey animals didn't fight back. Prey animals didn't use their environment as a weapon. Prey animals certainly didn't kill apex predators with crude explosives and falling debris. "Impossible," growled pack leader Threxnell through his comm system. "These creatures are supposed to be harmless." How did they know we were coming? The humans weren't finished. As the Zephyrians tried to free their trapped comrades, Security Officer Hughes emerged from a maintenance tunnel with a plasma cutter. Borrowed from the mining bay? The industrial tool wasn't designed as a weapon, but it cut through Zephyrian armor just fine. He killed one hunter before the others could react, then disappeared back into the tunnel network. Dr. Amy Foster, the station's chief medical officer, was treating wounded civilians in the emergency shelter when she heard fighting above. Instead of hiding, she grabbed a medical scanner and began studying the alien bodies that Carter's team brought her. Within minutes, she had identified weak points in Zephyrian anatomy and was sharing the information with the security teams. "Their armor has joints here and here," she explained over the comm system, blood from her own wounds staining her hands. "The neck area is vulnerable, and their breathing apparatus can be damaged if you hit the chest plate hard enough." "Commander." Vextel watched the battle with growing confusion and anger. His hunters were dying. Actual Zephyrian warriors, bred for combat over millions of years, were being killed by soft-skinned prey animals using mining equipment and improvised weapons. It made no sense. The humans demonstrated something the Zephyrians had never encountered in 3,000 years of conquest. They didn't just fight as individuals. They coordinated, shared information, and adapted their tactics in real time. When one approach failed, they tried something else. When they were outgunned, they used cunning. When they were trapped, they found new ways to escape. Lisa Rodriguez led a group of civilians through maintenance tunnels that the Zephyrians didn't even know existed. She had memorized every inch of the station during her years as foreman, and now she used that knowledge to move people to safety while providing intelligence to the security teams about enemy positions. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Zephyrians had superior weapons, armor, and physical abilities, but the humans had something else. They had the desperate creativity of a species that had climbed to the top of their world's food chain not through strength, but through intelligence and cooperation. When a group of hunters cornered 3 security officers in the engineering section, the humans didn't surrender. Instead, they overloaded a fusion generator, forcing the aliens to retreat or die in the explosion. When Zephyrian warriors tried to use their superior speed to outflank human positions, they found themselves walking into carefully placed traps, made from mining charges and industrial equipment. Most shocking of all to the Zephyrians was human persistence. When Hughes lost his weapon, he picked up a heavy wrench and kept fighting. When Dr. Foster was wounded, she continued treating patients and providing tactical advice. When Carter's team was pushed back to their final defensive position, they didn't break and run. They held their ground and made the aliens pay for every inch. Finally, overwhelming numbers told, the station fell to the Zephyrian hunters, but at a cost that left Commander Vexel staring at the casualty reports in disbelief. Of the 40 hunters he had brought to this simple training exercise, 12 were dead and 18 more were wounded. Against primitive prey animals, against creatures that shouldn't have been able to hurt them at all, the surviving humans were captured, but even in defeat, they didn't act like proper prey. They glared at their captors with defiant eyes. They tended to their wounded comrades. They showed no sign of submission or acceptance of their fate. Vextel opened a communication channel to Admiral Kreshtar, his voice shaking with confusion and rage. "Admiral, the human settlement has been taken, but we have suffered unexpected losses. These creatures, ... They fight like cornered apex predators, not prey species. They use tactics we have never encountered. I request permission to study them further before proceeding." There was a long silence before Kreshtar responded. "Understood, Commander. Secure your prisoners and return to the fleet. It seems these humans are more interesting than we initially thought." As the Zephyrian ships departed Europa Station with their prisoners, they left behind something they had never left before: doubt. For the first time in their species' history, the ultimate predators of the galaxy had encountered creatures that refused to be prey. The news from Europa Station spread through human space like wildfire. Admiral Susan Blake stood in the command center on Mars, watching the flood of reports coming in from every colony. Every outpost, every ship in the outer system. The images were grainy and incomplete, but they told a clear story. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. Their new neighbors had come hunting. Blake was a veteran of the colony wars, a woman who had fought pirates and corporate raiders across 3 star systems. Her steel-gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her blue eyes held the cold calculation of someone who understood war. She had seen the recordings from Europa Station, watched how these alien creatures moved like predators stalking prey. Every instinct she had developed in 40 years of military service was screaming danger. "How many ships do we have available for immediate deployment?" she asked her aide, Colonel Rick Santos. Santos checked his datapad, his weathered face grim. 18 destroyers, 7 cruisers, and the battleship Constitution. "Most of our fleet is scattered across the outer colonies on patrol duty. It will take time to recall them." "Don't have time," Blake replied, studying the tactical display. These aliens hit Europa like they knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't exploration or first contact. This was a hunting expedition. 3 days after the attack on Europa Station, long-range sensors picked up the alien ships again. They were moving through the asteroid belt, heading toward the mining platform at Ceres. Blake made her decision quickly. She couldn't wait for reinforcements. If these creatures wanted to hunt humans, they were about to learn that humans could also be hunters. Colonel Santos took command of the destroyer used Vigilant, leading a task force of 6 ships toward the asteroid belt. His crew included Navigator, Kate Phillips, a young woman with an instinct for space combat, and weapons officer Tony Martinez, who had studied the alien attack patterns from Europa Station until he could predict their movements. "What do we know about their tactics?" Santos asked his tactical team as they approached the intercept point. Phillips pulled up the Europa recordings on the main screen. "They fight like individual predators, sir. Each ship operates independently, relying on superior firepower and speed. They don't coordinate their attacks the way we do." Martinez nodded, adding his own observations. "Their weapons are more advanced than ours, and their ships are faster, but they seem to expect their enemies to run. When our people fought back at Europa, they appeared confused by organized resistance." Santos studied the tactical data, his mind working through possibilities. The aliens were superior in technology and individual capability, but they had shown a weakness. They didn't expect coordinated resistance. They hunted like lone wolves, not pack animals. "We're going to show them how humans learn to hunt," Santos decided. "Phillips, I want you to coordinate with the other ships." "Oh, we're going." To use pack tactics, the Zephyrian hunting ships detected the approaching human vessels with predatory satisfaction. Commander Vextel had been hoping for another chance to test these strange prey animals. This time, he would be ready for their crude tricks and improvised weapons. 6 small ships approaching, reported his sensor operator. They appeared to be military vessels, but primitive compared to our technology. Vextel studied the human formation through his view screen. The ships moved in a tight group, staying close together like frightened herd animals. This would be easy. His 3 hunting vessels could pick them off one by one with superior speed and firepower. "Begin the attack," he ordered. "Target the lead vessel first. Once we destroy their leader, the others will scatter." Something unexpected happened. As the Zephyrian ships closed in for the kill, the human vessels didn't scatter. Instead, they spread out in a complex pattern that forced the aliens to divide their attention. When Vextel's flagship targeted the lead destroyer, the other human ships moved to support it, creating overlapping fields of fire. Captain Morrison, commanding the UES Defiance, watched his tactical display as the alien ships approached. He had been waiting for this moment since Europa Station, burning with the need to make these creatures pay for what they had done to his people. "All ships execute pack formation Alpha," he broadcast to the fleet. "Remember, they're faster than us individually, but they don't know how to work as a team." The human ships moved like dancers, each vessel covering the others while maintaining coordinated fire patterns. When the Zephyrian flagship attacked Morrison's ship, 5 other human vessels immediately shifted position to provide crossfire support. The aliens found themselves facing not 6 individual targets, but a single coordinated organism for the first time in Zephyrian history. Their prey was hunting them. Phillips coordinated the fleet movements from her position on the Vigilant, her fingers dancing across the navigation controls as she adjusted the formation in real time. "Vigilant to all ships. Rotate formation to starboard. Force them into the kill zone." The human fleet moved as one entity, using tactics developed during humanity's rise on Earth. They surrounded their prey, cut off escape routes, and coordinated their attacks for maximum effect. Each ship covered the weaknesses of the others, creating a web of mutual support that the individual-minded Zephyrians couldn't understand or counter. Martinez locked weapons on the alien flagship, waiting for the perfect moment. "Target acquired. All ships report ready to fire." "Fire," Santos ordered. 6 human ships opened fire simultaneously. Their combined firepower focused on a single Zephyrian vessel. The alien ship's shields flared and failed under the coordinated assault. Energy beams punched through armor that had never been breached before. The mighty hunting ship began to burn. Commander Vextel stared in shock as his flagship shuddered under the combined human attack. This was impossible. These were prey animals. Prey animals didn't coordinate like this. They didn't hunt in organized packs. They didn't turn the hunters into the hunted. Turn fire, he snarled. Destroy them all. But the humans had already adapted their formation. As his damaged ship tried to target one of the human vessels, the others moved to protect it, forcing him to divide his fire. When he concentrated on a single target, the others punished him for it. The humans fought like a single organism with multiple bodies, each part supporting the whole. The battle raged through the asteroid field, with chunks of rock exploding around the combating fleets. The Zephyrians had superior individual ships, but the humans had something the aliens had never encountered: perfect coordination between multiple units, working toward a common goal. Dr. Helen Chang, monitoring the battle from Mars Command, watched the tactical displays with fascination. Admiral Blake, look at this. The aliens are trying to engage our ships one-on-one, but our people keep forcing them into multi-ship engagements. It's like watching wolves hunt. Blake nodded grimly. Humanity didn't reach the top of Earth's food chain through individual strength. We got there by hunting in packs, by using our brains instead of our claws. These aliens are about to learn what that means. The tide of battle turned decisively when Captain Morrison's Defiance coordinated with 3 other ships to trap one of the Zephyrian vessels in a crossfire. Got an alien ship, designed for individual combat, couldn't handle simultaneous attacks from multiple directions. It exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up the asteroid field. Vexthel watched one of his hunting ships die and felt something he had never experienced before: fear. Not fear of individual death, which was natural for any predator, but fear of being outmatched, of encountering something more dangerous than himself. All ships, retreat, he ordered, his voice shaking. Return to the fleet immediately. The surviving Zephyrian ships fled the battlefield, but they carried with them a terrible new knowledge. These humans weren't prey animals at all. They were pack hunters, coordinated and intelligent. And they had just turned 3,000 years of Zephyrian dominance upside down as the alien ships disappeared into hyperspace. The human fleet regrouped. They had lost no ships and suffered minimal damage while destroying one enemy vessel and driving off the others. The victory was complete, but more importantly, it proved something crucial about humanity's place in the galaxy. Admiral Santos reported to Blake over the comm channel, "The aliens are retreating. We've driven them off." Blake smiled for the first time since the crisis began. "Well done, Colonel. But this is just the beginning. Send word to all human colonies and outposts. The galaxy has apex predators, but now it has something else. It has humans." The age of easy hunting was over for the Zephyrian Empire. They had awakened something far more dangerous than they imagined. A species that combined the intelligence of tool users with the coordination of pack hunters. For the first time in their history, the ultimate predators had become prey. Admiral Crestar stood in the war chamber of his flagship, staring at the holographic display showing the remains of Commander Vextal's hunting fleet. 2 ships destroyed, 1 heavily damaged, and dozens of his finest warriors dead. The hands of creatures he had, dismissed as harmless prey animals, the other members of the High Command surrounded the display table, their claws clicking nervously against the metal surface. These were the greatest hunters in Zephyrian history. Beings who had conquered 47 star systems without ever meeting real resistance. Now they faced something that challenged everything they believed about the natural order of the galaxy. "This cannot stand," growled war leader Gexmore, his black scales rippling with anger. "These humans have killed our warriors. They must be crushed completely, or other prey species will think they can resist us as well." Crestar nodded slowly. His yellow eyes studied the tactical recordings from the asteroid belt battle over and over, trying to understand how such weak creatures had defeated Zephyrian hunters. The humans moved like a single organism, each ship supporting the others in ways that made no sense to predator minds. Mobilize the 7th hunting fleet, he decided. 50 ships, 2,000 warriors. We will show these humans what happens when prey animals forget their place. The massive Zephyrian fleet began gathering near their forward base, 50 sleek warships, each bristling with weapons designed to hunt and kill. Every ship carried elite warriors who had proven themselves in dozens of successful hunts. This was enough firepower to conquer entire star systems. It was all focused on one target: the human colonies. But humans were already preparing for the storm that was coming. General Pete Williams, the grizzled commander of Mars Defense Grid, had been studying every piece of captured Zephyrian technology his teams could get their hands on. His weathered face showed the strain of sleepless nights spent planning humanity's defense against an enemy that outclassed them in every measurable way. Dr. Helen Chang worked alongside engineer Roy Jackson in the research labs beneath Mars Command. Surrounded by pieces of alien wreckage salvaged from the asteroid battle, Chang was a brilliant physicist who had spent her career studying advanced propulsion systems. Jackson was a practical engineer who could build anything, given enough time and resources. Their weapons are definitely more advanced than ours, Chang explained to General Williams as she pointed to the alien energy cannon they had managed to recover. But look at this targeting system. It's designed for single target engagement. They don't have any programming for coordinated group tactics. Jackson nodded, wiping grease from his hands with a dirty rag. Their whole technology base assumes individual combat, general. Every system is optimized for one-own hunting. They've never needed to fight coordinated enemies before. Williams studied the alien technology with the eye of a soldier who had fought in 3 different wars. So their strength is also their weakness. They're so focused on individual superiority that they can't adapt to pack tactics. Exactly, Chang confirmed. But General, we need to be realistic. Even with coordination advantages, 50 of their ships against our entire fleet is still going to be a massacre unless we can level the playing field somehow. While the scientists worked on understanding alien technology, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Murphy was leading a different kind of mission. Her stealth ship U.S. Shadow had been modified with captured Zephyrian technology, allowing it to approach enemy vessels undetected. Murphy was a special operations officer who had spent years infiltrating pirate bases and corporate strongholds. Her team included Sergeant Bobby Liu, an electronics specialist who could hack any computer system ever. Built and Corporal Amy Stone, a demolitions expert who could turn a paperclip into a bomb given enough imagination. They had volunteered for what everyone knew was probably a suicide mission, infiltrating an alien warship to gather intelligence. The Shadow drifted silently through space toward the gathering Zephyrian fleet, its hull coated with experimental stealth materials that should fool alien sensors. Murphy watched the massive enemy ships through her view screen, counting dozens of vessels that could each destroy anything in the human fleet. Target acquired, Liu reported from his sensor station. That cruiser on the edge of their formation. Looks isolated enough for infiltration. Murphy nodded. Stone, you ready with the boarding charges? Stone grinned, patting the small explosive devices attached to her belt. Ready to make some noise, Commander? The infiltration went better than anyone had dared hope. The Zephyrians focused on individual prowess and hunting, had never developed proper security protocols against infiltration. Their ship designs assumed that enemies would fight honorably in open combat, not sneak aboard like parasites. Murphy's team spent 6 hours inside the alien vessel, downloading computer files and recording everything they could about Zephyrian society and military organization. What they discovered changed everything humanity thought they knew about their enemies. General Williams, Murphy reported when the Shadow returned to Mars. You need to see this. The aliens aren't just individual fighters. Their entire civilization is built around individual achievement. They don't have any concept of sacrifice for the greater good. The intelligence files Liu had stolen painted a picture of a society unlike anything humans had ever encountered. Every Zephyrian was ranked by their individual hunting achievements. Their military had no real chain of command beyond personal dominance. They had never developed concepts like military strategy or coordinated defense because they had never needed them. They're not soldiers, Williams realized as he studied the reports. They're just individual predators who happen to have spaceships. They've never fought a real war because they've never met anyone who could fight back effectively. The massive Zephyrian fleet arrived at Mars 3 days later. Their 50 ships arranged in a hunting formation that looked impressive, but made no tactical sense from a military perspective. Admiral Kreshtar expected to overwhelm the human defenses through sheer firepower and individual superiority. Instead, he found himself facing something unprecedented in galactic history. A coordinated military defense designed by social hunters who understood both strategy and sacrifice. General Williams had positioned his ships in overlapping defensive zones around Mars, with each unit supporting the others and no single point of failure. Underground bases on Mars itself housed missile batteries and fighter squadrons ready to support the fleet action. Most importantly, Williams had spent weeks drilling his crews on pack tactics, designed specifically to counter individual predator behaviors. The battle began when the Zephyrian ships charged toward Mars in a loose swarm, each captain seeking individual glory by being the first to reach the planet. They expected the human ships to scatter before their superior firepower, allowing the aliens to pick them off one by one. Instead, the human fleet fell back in perfect coordination, drawing the Zephyrians into prepared kill zones. When alien ships pursued individual human vessels, they found themselves facing concentrated fire from multiple directions. The humans fought like their ancestors had when hunting mammoths, coordinated, patient, and willing to sacrifice individual advantages for group success. Major Chris Taylor led a squadron of fighters from the underground bases on Mars, using the planet's gravity well and atmosphere to perform maneuvers the aliens couldn't match. His pilots flew like a flock of birds, covering the others while maintaining deadly, effective attack patterns. Captain Julie Barnes commanded the battleship, U.S. Constitution, coordinating the defense with calm precision as alien ships exploded around her. Her crew, including Tactical Officer Nick Foster and Engineer Bobby Liu, worked as a perfectly coordinated team to keep their ship fighting even as superior alien weapons hammered their shields. The battle raged for 18 hours. Human ships were destroyed, brave crews dying as they held their positions to protect others. But for every human vessel lost, the coordinated tactics claimed 2 or more alien ships. The Zephyrians, designed for individual combat, couldn't adapt to facing an enemy that fought as a unified organism. Admiral Kreshtar watched his mighty fleet being systematically destroyed by creatures he had considered prey animals. His hunters, the finest warriors in the galaxy, were being outfought by beings who understood something the Zephyrians had never learned: the power of coordinated sacrifice for a common goal. As his flagship burned around him and his fleet lay in ruins, Kreshtar finally understood the terrible truth. The galaxy's apex predators had met something more dangerous than themselves, a species that had evolved from prey animals into pack hunters, combining intelligence with coordination in ways that made them nearly unstoppable. The Battle of Mars ended with the Zephyrian fleet in retreat, their myth of invincibility shattered forever. Humanity had proven that individual strength meant nothing against coordinated intelligence and mutual sacrifice. The defeat at Mars sent shockwaves through the Zephyrian Empire that reached every corner of their territory. For 3,000 years, no enemy had ever destroyed a Zephyrian fleet. No prey species had ever fought back successfully. Now, the impossible had happened. Panic spread through their worlds like a disease. Admiral Kreshtar stood in the ruins of his command center, surrounded by the wreckage of his once mighty fleet. The 50 ships that had attacked Mars, only 12 had escaped. 2,000 of the Empire's finest warriors were dead or captured. The humans had done more than win a battle. They had shattered the foundation of Zephyrian society. But Kreshtar was not ready to admit defeat. In his mind, this was still a matter of honor, of proving that Zephyrians remained the galaxy's apex predators. If the humans wanted war, he would give them war on a scale that would burn their entire species from the stars. Send word to every hunting fleet in the Empire, he commanded his surviving officers. Mobilize everything. Every ship, every warrior, every weapon we possess. We will show these prey animals what happens when they challenge the natural order. The call went out across Zephyrian space, reaching hundreds of worlds where warrior clans prepared for the greatest hunt in their history. This was about survival of their entire way of life. If humans could defeat Zephyrians, then everything they believed about strength and dominance was a lie. But the war had already changed both species in ways neither fully understood. The humans had tasted victory against impossible odds and discovered something primal within themselves. They were no longer the peaceful colonists who had mined asteroids and dreamed of exploring the stars. They had become what their ancestors had always been, persistent hunters capable of tracking prey across any distance, over any time. Until their target was exhausted and defeated, Captain Julie Barnes stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution. Humanity's newest and most advanced warship, built using technology learned from captured Zephyrian vessels. It represented the rapid adaptation that made humans so dangerous. Barnes herself had changed during the war. From a young officer who had never seen combat to a hardened veteran who understood the true nature of galactic survival, her crew reflected this transformation. Tactical officer Nick Foster had studied alien combat patterns until he could predict enemy movements before they happened. Engineer Bobby Liu had modified human weapon systems to match alien technology, creating hybrid systems that combine human creativity with Zephyrian power. The Retribution led humanity's first deep space fleet. 30 ships designed not just for defense, but for taking the war to enemy territory. These were no longer the crude mining vessels and colony ships that had first faced the aliens. These were weapons of war, built by a species that had remembered what it meant to be apex predators. The final confrontation came in the Centauri Void, a region of empty space between star systems, where Admiral Kreshtar made his last stand. He had gathered the surviving strength of the Zephyrian Empire, over 200 ships carrying the last of their warrior elite. This was everything they had left, thrown into one desperate gamble to destroy humanity before it could spread further. Barnes studied the alien formation through her view screen, noting how they had finally learned to coordinate their attacks. The war had forced both species to evolve, and the Zephyrians were no longer the individual hunters who had first attacked Europa Station. They moved in organized groups now, their tactics copied from human examples. They're learning, Foster observed from his tactical station. Look at their formation. They're trying to use our own coordination techniques against us. But they're still thinking like hunters, Barnes replied, studying the enemy patterns. They're coordinating, but they're not sacrificing. Every ship is still trying to maximize its own survival chances. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Two apex predator species, both evolved to the peak of their potential, clashed in the emptiness between stars. The Zephyrians fought with desperate fury, knowing that defeat meant the end of their dominance. The humans fought with cold determination, understanding that this was the moment that would decide their species' future. But the difference between them became clear as the battle progressed. The Zephyrians had learned coordination, but they could not learn sacrifice. When human ships were damaged, other vessels moved to protect them, even at great risk to themselves. When Zephyrian ships were hurt, they retreated to save themselves, leaving gaps in their formation. Dr. Helen Chang monitored the battle from Earth, watching as her hybrid weapon systems performed exactly as designed. The combination of human ingenuity and alien technology was proving devastatingly effective against ships built purely for individual combat. Admiral Blake, she reported, the enemy formation is beginning to collapse. They can't maintain coordination when individual ships start taking heavy damage. Blake nodded, watching the tactical display with grim satisfaction. That's the difference between a pack and a mob. When the going gets tough, a mob scatters. A pack closes ranks. The turning point came when Admiral Kreshtar's flagship found itself surrounded by 5 human vessels. Barnes had coordinated the attack personally, using her fleet's mobility to isolate the alien commander from his supporting ships. The Zephyrian admiral faced a choice: order his remaining ships to rescue him at terrible cost, or abandon him to save themselves. For a moment, Kreshtar hesitated. In the old days, he would have expected his warriors to die trying to save their leader. But the war had taught even Zephyrians the value of survival over honor. His remaining ships continued their retreat, leaving him to face the humans alone. But something unexpected happened then. Instead of destroying the helpless alien flagship, Barnes opened a communication channel. Her image appeared on Kreshtar's main screen. The Zephyrian admiral found himself staring at something he had never expected to see. Mercy from an apex predator. "Admiral Kreshtar," Barnes said, her voice calm and professional, "your fleet is defeated. Your empire is broken. But you don't have to die here. Surrender, and we can end this war." Kreshtar stared at the human commander in shock. In 3,000 years of Zephyrian history, no enemy had ever offered terms to a defeated foe. Ever enemies were killed or enslaved. There was no third option in the natural order of predator and prey. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why would apex predators show mercy to their enemies?" Barnes smiled, and for the first time, Kreshtar saw something in human eyes that he had never noticed before. It wasn't the cold calculation of a predator or the fear of prey. It was intelligence combined with something else, something that made humans more dangerous than any simple apex predator could ever be. "Because we're not just apex predators," Barnes explained. "We're persistence hunters. We don't just kill our prey. We decide when the hunt is over." The war ended not with the destruction of the Zephyrian Empire, but with its transformation. Kreshtar's surrender became a model for other alien species throughout the galaxy. Humanity had proven that they were more than capable of violence when threatened, but they were also capable of something that true apex predators rarely demonstrated: wisdom. The Zephyrians found themselves in a galaxy where they were no longer the ultimate hunters. That position belonged to humanity now, a species that combined all the deadliness of apex predators with the coordination of pack hunters and the intelligence to know when to stop killing. Other alien species watched nervously as human ships began exploring beyond their original territory. These persistence hunters from a death world were expanding into the galaxy. They brought with them a new kind of dominance. Not the simple rule of strength that the Zephyrians had imposed, but something more complex and far more dangerous. The galaxy had new apex predators, and they were patient enough to hunt across decades, intelligent enough to adapt to any threat, and coordinated enough to work as a single organism spanning multiple star systems. Most terrifying of all, they were wise enough to show mercy when it served their purposes. The age of Zephyrian dominance was over. The age of humanity had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.